Welcome back to the podcast, or if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm so happy that you're here. So, today I want to talk to you about something that I genuinely believe can change your life faster than almost any strategy, any tactic, any planner or routine or productivity hack ever could. So, listen up. This is going to be good. Okay. And the awesome thing is that it's incredibly simple. And I absolutely like simple. We don't need to complicate things. So, when I say simple, I don't mean that it's necessarily easy, but it is simple. Okay. So, stay with me here. I think a lot of women are walking around believing that the life that they want is going to require some massive breakthrough moment. Like they are just waiting for it. They think that one day they're going to discover the perfect strategy. They think that somehow the perfect morning routine is going to appear, or the perfect business coach is going to come into their realm, or the perfect opportunity is going to present itself, the perfect plan. Okay. And then everything is finally going to click in place. Have you felt that way? So I understand that type of thinking because I have absolutely been that woman in my life. I have bought the courses, I have listened to endless podcasts, I have watched all the YouTube videos, I have filled journals and journals with goals and dreams and plans for my future. And yet for years, there were areas of my life where I felt like I was moving much more slowly than I wanted to. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're genuinely trying, right? You're learning and you're growing, you're being open and receptive, you're showing up, and yet part of you is wondering, why does this still feel so hard? Why does it feel like change is taking forever? Why do I keep ending up in the same place over and over and over again? And what I've discovered is that most women are looking for change in the wrong places. They think that the answer is somewhere out there. Another strategy, another piece of information, another thing to do. But often the fastest way to change your life is not to add something. It is to stop normalizing something. And that's what we're talking about today. Okay. So your life is a reflection of what feels normal. One of the most powerful things I have learned through coaching women is that people tend to create lives that match what feels normal to them. Not necessarily what they want, but instead what feels normal for them. So think about that for a minute. Your current reality is largely a reflection of what your mind and nervous system have accepted as familiar. So the amount of money that you believe that you can make, the way you allow people to treat you, the way that you talk to yourself, the opportunities that you go out there and pursue, the risks that you're willing to take. Even the amount of rest that you allow yourself, the amount of joy that you allow yourself. It's the standards that you hold, the boundaries that you keep, all of those things, right? All of those things. Most of it exists within the range of what feels normal for you. And this is why change can feel so frustrating sometimes, because consciously you want something very different than what you currently have. You may want a really successful, thriving business, or you may want a healthier, more passionate marriage, or you may want more personal confidence. You may want more freedom. You may want to make more money. You may want to finally stop doubting yourself. But if your nervous system is still organized around the old normal, you will often find yourself pulled back toward what is familiar. And this was one of the hardest things that I had to admit to myself. In all these years of coaching and all these years of studying this, I do remember a season in my own life where I was incredibly frustrated. I was working so hard. I mean, I was working really hard. I felt like I was doing all the things and wearing all the hats, and I wasn't seeing the level of success that I believed was possible for me. And I kept looking outside of myself for the answer. So I kept thinking that maybe what I needed was a different strategy, or maybe I needed to work more, or maybe I needed to be more disciplined in the work that I was doing, more consistent. Maybe I needed to learn one more thing, like I was missing that one thing. And eventually I got to the place where I had to admit something that was really uncomfortable for me. And it was, the issue was not that I lacked information. The issue is that I was still normalizing things that didn't belong in the life I said I wanted. So I was normalizing overthinking. And in the life that I wanted, I made quick decisions. I was normalizing second guessing myself. I kept doing it. And in the life that I wanted, I was somebody who confidently could make a decision without second guessing herself. I was normalizing waiting for certainty for proof. I was normalizing worrying about what people thought. I was normalizing emotional exhaustion. And as long as those things felt normal, my results reflected them. And that realization, once I understood that fact, everything changed because it meant that I didn't need more information. I just needed to create a new normal. So when people think about changing their lives, they often imagine giant, like dramatic shifts in their lives. And sometimes those happen, they do, but most lasting transformation happens a little bit more slowly, less dramatically. It happens when a woman starts deciding that certain things, certain situations are simply no longer available to her. She's not forcing herself. She's making these decisions because she knows that certain situations and certain mindsets just no longer match who she's becoming. So she'll start saying things like, it's no longer normal for me to abandon myself in this situation, or it's no longer normal for me to spend 3 days obsessing over one decision. It's no longer normal for me to shrink when new and exciting opportunities appear. It's no longer normal for me to talk to myself this way, or it's no longer normal for me to assume failure before I even begin the thing. And that shift might sound subtle. It might just sound, really easy. And yes, it is, but it's enormous. This is an enormous shift because now when you're doing that, you're not trying to change your life through willpower. You're changing your life through identity, through your own identity. And identity is powerful. I remember one of my clients came to me wanting to grow her business. And like so many women, she believed that she just needed a new strategy. But as we worked together, it became clear that strategy was not the real issue. She had all the strategy. She had a lot of strategy. She was going crazy with strategy. The real issue is that she had normalized deep self-doubt within herself. Every opportunity that came her way, she questioned. She overanalyzed every single decision that was in front of her. And every next step that she was going to take in her business required a lot of reassurance from people in her circle. And because self-doubt felt normal for her, she just listened to it constantly. The breakthrough came for this woman when she stopped treating self-doubt as wisdom. And she started seeing it as a pattern in her life, a habit that she had created, this familiar voice of worry. And it actually wasn't in alignment with truth. Once she stopped obeying it automatically, everything in her life and business began shifting. And it's not because she became a different person overnight. It's because she stopped normalizing the things that kept her stuck over and over again. So I want you to ask yourself something today. What have I been treating as normal in my life that actually needs to change? And I want you to be honest. Maybe take out a journal and use this as your journaling prompt for today. What have I been treating as normal that actually needs to change in my life? Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe that's become a very normal piece of your life and you know that's something that needs to change. Maybe it's overwhelm. Maybe you have just wired yourself to constantly be overwhelmed and you know that needs to change. Maybe it's financial struggle. Maybe you've told yourself that building wealth is hard and that's something that you need to change as well because that's just a belief that you've adopted. It's not actually true. Maybe it's self-criticism. Maybe you are just way too hard on yourself and that's what you want to change. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's constantly putting yourself last. And if you're a mama, I know that's a hard one to break free from. Maybe it's living in a state of emotional urgency. You're always waiting for the next shoe to drop. And then I want you to ask yourself a second question, okay? What would the woman I'm becoming normalize instead? Because that answer is extremely important. The woman you're becoming, well, she probably would normalize peace. I'm just going to speak for myself here. Self-trust, consistency, boundaries, visibility and being confident in that visibility. And I'm speaking like on stages, on social media, however it is you're visible in your business, in your life. Something I really wanted to normalize. These are all things I wanted to normalize when I was doing this work, but joy, feeling comfortable receiving more income, confidence, support, all of these things. And every time you choose one of those things, you reinforce the new normal. If you take nothing else away from today's episode, I hope that you remember this. The fastest way to change your life is not to just change everything and uproot everything. The fastest way to change your life is to change what you're willing to call normal. Because once your normal changes, your decisions change. Your actions are going to change, your expectations change, your identity changes, and eventually, yes, your life changes too. So let me give you a few takeaways before we wrap up. I want to leave you with these thoughts for the week as we're going into this week. Okay, number one, your life is not primarily a reflection of what you want. It is a reflection of what you have normalized. So this may sound like bold in your face, but I want you to receive it as something that's actually really empowering, because if your current reality was created through repeated thoughts and beliefs and, these like boundaries and standards and behaviors and all of these things that you hold, then a new reality can be created the same way. Okay, number two, my second takeaway for you, lasting change rarely comes from one big breakthrough. It comes from small shifts repeated consistently. So we often underestimate the power of tiny, like micro decisions, but little by little, those decisions compound and they add up to a lot. So the woman you're becoming is built one choice at a time, one thought at a time, one response at a time. Okay, number three, stop treating every fearful thought like it deserves a vote. So just because you have a thought that enters your mind does not mean that it is wise. It does not mean that it's true. It does not mean it should be driving the bus. Okay. Learn to notice those thoughts without automatically obeying them. Number four, if you want a different life, start by creating a different normal. I want you to ask yourself, what is the woman I'm becoming consider normal? How does she speak to herself? What does she tolerate and not tolerate in her life? What does she no longer entertain in her life or business? The answers to those questions will tell you exactly where your next level is. And then number five, the fastest way to change your life is to stop waiting for permission to do so. You don't need more proof. You don't need more certainty. You don't need to read more books and do all the things, although I love reading, yes, but you don't need every single detail figured out, or you're never going to change. You're never going to start. At some point, growth requires a decision. And often the women who change their lives are the fastest simply because they decide sooner than everybody else. So today, ask yourself, what am I ready to stop normalizing? Because your answer may be the beginning of everything that you've been praying for. Now, before we go, if this episode is hitting you and you're realizing that the life you want is going to require a new normal, which that is true for all of us, I want to personally invite you into my private community, the Inner Shift Society, because here's what I know for sure. Most women don't struggle because they lack information. They struggle because they are trying to create lasting change in isolation. I say it all the time, isolation is the devil's playground. So you're trying to create change in isolation and it's not working after you've listened to the podcast and, after you've felt inspired and after you've had some type of a little breakthrough, and then life happens and the old patterns come back, the old thinking comes back, the old identity starts to get louder than the new one that you've been trying to work on. That's when you need community. And that's exactly why I created the Inner Shift Society. So it's a space where women are doing this work together. We have conversations about identity, about self-concept, about embodiment, about your mindset, about how to truly change your life by rewiring your subconscious, how to change your business, how to grow your income and your abundance and your faith, and how to really become the woman that you know you're meant to be. And so if you're tired of consuming content and you're ready to actually create transformation, I would love to have you inside. You will see the link to join in the show notes, and I'm excited to welcome you there. So, as I say every week, go and be the woman that your future is waiting on. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend some of your time today with me. I always appreciate it. I know your time is valuable, and I will see you all next week. Be blessed.